Even in her childhood, Princess Viola had an inevitable submission to the dance. Just as trees are swayed by the wind, so her body responded to music with perfect grace and sympathy. Her parents were the king and queen and often held grand balls. Her dance card was always full, but the young men who danced with Viola were always very aware that she was never really dancing with them, but only with the music. Indeed, when they were honest with themselves, they would admit that they would much rather just stand and watch her dance. As time went on, she was betrothed to Prince Hugo. Prince Hugo was ecstatic about this, but Princess Viola was not. She knew him to be a severe and imperious young man and did not look forward to being his wife. But she had no choice in the matter. There was, of course, a great banquet and a ball to celebrate the betrothal. But after the first few dances, Princess Viola slipped out of the castle and went to wander around the castle grounds in the bright moonlight. She came at length to an old maze that had been installed by a previous king. The map to the center had long been lost. Nobody had been in there for years. In fact, many people thought that it was unsafe and unwise to do so. Princess Viola stood in front of the gate for a few moments, pushed open, and went inside. Miraculously, she soon came to the center of the maze, which was a large circle full of soft sand. She walked to the center of this circle, looked at the tall trees all around her, and then looked straight up at the brilliant, bright moon that was shining down on her. She reached up her hands to the moon and said, "Oh, my beautiful dancing room, how is it that I have never known about you until now? But music, there must be music." Suddenly, the air was filled with the sound of a grand orchestra. It played a lovely, languid saraband. Slowly, her body swayed to the music. She lifted her long hair first with one hand and then with the other. Slowly, her soft satin shoes slid over the silver sand. The music ended with a clash of cymbals. She looked up and said almost imperiously, "Music! More music!" Next came a lively caprice, with music pelting along violin strings, leaping and laughing. She leapt, she danced, she spun, she pirouetted, around and around and around. She danced and danced and danced. When she was on her way back to the castle, she encountered Prince Hugo, who had been out looking for her. He said to her, "Viola, where have you been?" And she stamped her foot and said, "I will not be questioned." He said, "I have some right to question." She threw back her head and laughed and said, "For the first time in my life, I have been dancing." Prince Hugo was left to mutter and mutter and mutter. The king and queen decreed that on the night of every full moon for 1 year, there should be a ball, and at the next day, after the last of these balls, there would be the wedding. Every night during these balls, Princess Viola slid out of the castle and went to dance in the maze. Prince Hugo knew about this and did not try to stop her, but he did tell her that once they were married, there would be no more dancing in the maze, and if he had to, he would have the maze ripped out. On the night before the wedding, Princess Viola slipped out and went to the maze to dance. The music was all very, very fast this night. She danced and danced and danced, and suddenly had the feeling that she was no longer controlling the dancing. Her body seemed to move of its own accord, without her will. And then suddenly she realized that her feet were no longer touching the ground. She spun and spun and spun, and then she felt some huge hand reach out and grab her wrist in an iron grip. Princess Viola did not come down for breakfast in the castle the next morning. Her apartment was searched. She was not found. Search parties were sent out all around the castle grounds. They searched the local villages. They searched the fields. They searched the woodlands. They searched the rivers and the streams. But they did not find Princess Viola. Indeed, she was never seen again, except 1 month after the last ball, Princess Hugo was wandering around the castle grounds in the moonlight and came to the maze. He went inside, and after some time, he found the center of the maze. It was again a bright full moon. He walked to the center of the maze and stood there, wondering what had happened to Princess Viola. A small cloud passed in front of the moon briefly, and he looked up at the moon. And there, in the bright silver disk, just for a moment, he thought he saw, unmistakably, a smiling face of Princess Viola.